So we've spoken about how you need an authorizer to convene a team. The question is, what's a team and how do you bring a team together? Now, hopefully you're asking this question because you're actually part of a team and that you're working on PDIA. And so we want to give you some hints as to what a successful team looks like. Now, in the readings that we provide, we're going to give you some readings by somebody called Richard Hackman. And Richard Hackman provides a lot more wisdom than I'm going to give you in these few minutes. So if you can read those, they're really, really useful, not just for the PDIA process, but for working in teams generally. He speaks about successful habits, successful characteristics of teams. So let's say that you start with your team, and your team has got maybe 5 to 7 members, and that's an important number because Hackman says you bring the complexity of your organizations and your own networks into a team. So when you add people, you're not adding just an additional person, you're adding the burdens of all of their organizations, and it's really difficult to have a team that is more than 5 to 7 members. And we find this in the field as well. We find that when you have bigger teams, it's really hard to determine who's responsible for things. They find it harder to find times when they can meet with each other. There's just practical issues to this. So the first thing is the size of the team. Be careful not to make it too small, but also not to make it too big. The second thing is that it needs to be a real team. You need to know who's in the team. And we start off and we want to know who are the names, what are their kinds of roles, where do they come from, and they need to know who's in the team as well. Now, this sounds like a really simple thing, but when you read Hackman's work, you'll find out that he did a lot of research going into teams in commercial organizations, and he asked the questions to team members, you know, how many people are in your team, and can you name them? And it was quite common for people to say, 5 people, and here's who they are. And then he'd go and he'd interview one of the people. He'd say, how many people in a team? 10 people, here's who they are. How many people in a team? 3 people, here's who they are. That's not a real team. You need to be a real team. You need to know who's on your team, and you need to be committed to each other. The second thing that I would say is you need to be an active team. And one of the things that Hackman says is teams are not committees. They're not groups that get together now and again to talk about things. They are teams that do things together. It's really important. Teams, many people have gone on team building exercises where they climb buildings or they do ropes courses or they go through jungles together. And sometimes those things are really silly, but the underlying thinking behind them is that when you do things together, you build a rapport with each other, you build trust with each other, etc. Now, we don't do those things in PDIA because we'd rather you didn't mess around in the jungle, you just mess around in your jungle, right? You actually started dealing with your problem. But that means that you need to meet regularly. That means that you actually need to combine on tasks. Don't break up and do 6 different tasks and then come together and report on them. Break up into 2 or 3 groups. Do the tasks together. Learn a little bit about each other's strengths. Learn from each other. Support each other. So you need to be a real team, you need to know who's on the team, you need to be an active team. Now you also need to have a team that has dedicated time to meet. And we really mean this. We find that with a lot of teams that say every week we'll determine when we're going to meet, they never meet. Because every week they spend their time trying to coordinate their diaries. Much better to say we're going to meet at 7 o'clock on Tuesday evening for an hour and a half. That's what we're going to do. You need to talk, you need to share, you need to become real colleagues with each other. Now, does everyone have to get along? Well, it's great if you do, but you don't always get along. And actually, you shouldn't be choosing people to be on your team just because you get on with each other. It's always good to have people who are going to spar with each other, who are going to bring different ideas so that we can learn from each other. And that's an important point of a team. We're not here to just be yes men or yes women and to just agree with everything the other team members say. We're here to help ourselves create something that is new. And to do that, you need to have diversity on your team. And this becomes a really important issue for the authorizer, is the authorizer has to play his or her role holding the team together. Has to create an environment in which the team can do the things together, in which the team can thrive, in which everyone can be motivated. Building a team is really difficult. Keeping a team together is even harder. But it is vital for the purposes of PDIA.